Germany proper over here, and this is East Prussia on the Baltic. This is Germany, and this is Germany. And again, it's the same thing I was just talking about with Russia and the Crimea. They're not geographically linked, right? When the Versailles Treaty was written, they created this new Poland, and they decided they wanted to give Poland access to the sea. They wanted to give Poland access to the sea. Now you'll notice here, this is this different color. This is kind of a green color here. And that's because Danzig, the city of Danzig, today it's Gdansk, but Danzig essentially is technically a free city controlled by the League of Nations in Switzerland. It's technically a free city controlled by the League of Nations. But Poland is allowed to administer it. Essentially, all of the civil administration of the city is handled by Poland. I believe Poland could collect taxes from the port. But the whole point of this was to give Poland access to the sea. So Poland had a port, it had access to the sea. And the byproduct is it cuts Germany into two halves, right? You got the major part of Germany, Germany proper over here, and then you've got smaller East Prussia right there. So you've got this big division of Germany. And of course, Hitler hates this arrangement because it was created by the Treaty of Versailles. And of course, as we know, Hitler absolutely detests the Treaty of Versailles. So Hitler, after he invades Czechoslovakia, he starts saying, we need to return to the Polish corridor. The Poles immediately say, no. No, you cannot have it. And London and Paris immediately, I think it's in April of 1939, they issue publicly a guarantee to Poland. They say, we guarantee your borders. If any power attempts to encroach upon your sovereignty, we will defend you. We will help you to defend. So as soon as Hitler hears that the British and French are kind of taking a tougher stance, he kind of pulls back a little bit. He kind of pulls back from that. He amends his demands. He essentially says, okay, we don't need a return to the Polish corridor. But what we do need is road and rail access through it. Most German military shipments and even some other shipments couldn't go through here, couldn't cross through. They would have to ship it through the Baltic, right? They're saying we need road and rail access. We need essentially our own railroad, our own roads that we can use to get us through Poland to East Prussia. But that's not it. Hitler also starts making demands like, again, you need to take pro-German, friendly to German politicians into your government. There's a few other demands he makes. And essentially, what all of this would have amounted to is Poland would have then become a satellite of Germany. It would have become essentially a puppet of Germany. And the Poles, not only are they not willing to part with the corridor, they are not willing to surrender their sovereignty. The Poles are not willing to surrender their sovereignty. It appears we have an impasse. But of course, Hitler plays the card he's been playing all along. Oh, but guess what? These lands were German until World War I. There are millions of ethnic Germans living here, and guess what? They're being persecuted. The Poles are persecuting the ethnic Germans. Now again, there were some isolated incidents of violence against ethnic Germans, but they were very, very few. Hitler is acting like Pole or ethnic Germans are being murdered and tortured and raped every day, and he's really, their property being defiled. He's really pushing this. But by this point, Hitler has already tipped his hand, right? He's already done it. People know all the crap about ethnic Germans is just what Hitler is saying to create more sympathy for him and to empower him and to use as a pretext, right? So by this point, the British and the French really don't have the stomach for Hitler's lies. They know he's lying. They don't have the stomach for it. So London and Paris start thinking, well, how can we scare Hitler? How can we deter Hitler from any kind of aggressive action? Now, in London, there is a lot of... Most people in London don't like Hitler's anti-Semitism. They don't like the totalitarian approach he's taken. But most people in London like the fact that you have a strong right-wing government in the middle of Germany that is a bulwark against Soviet communism. They don't want Soviet communism to spread to the rest of the world and the rest of Europe. So they're kind of glad you've got someone like Hitler in charge in Germany. And they're kind of upset, though, that he's kind of doing these things that are kind of putting them on edge, that is threatening Britain's security, right? Britain has always been about balance of power. Britain's always been about, okay, no one power is going to get too big and be kind of a European hegemon. And to that end, like Britain had always historically played, helped the underdog in order to maintain that balance of power. Throughout its history, Britain had subsidized European powers essentially in wartime to fight proxy wars, like when in the 7 Years' War, Hitler the British subsidized Frederick the Great to fight the French because they thought the French were getting too powerful, right? In World War I, again, World War II, the British are backing the French because they're scared of the Germans. So they're trying to maintain this balance of power in Europe. But they're kind of at a point where they realize this just isn't working, and Hitler is not behaving the way we needed him to behave. So they're going to do something pretty drastic. The British and the French make a decision. We're going to seek some kind of an accommodation with the Soviets. This is a pretty radical shift in British foreign policy. Okay? So what they do is they send, the British and the French both send mid-level diplomats on a ship that takes several days to sail from England to the Soviet Union, St. Petersburg, through the Baltic. So they're kind of taking their time with it. And they're kind of letting it be known, we're sending diplomats to talk with the Russians. The idea being that maybe even the thought that the Western powers would collude with the Russians would be enough to tame Hitler and he'd back down. Okay? So, but they're taking this leisurely voyage. When they finally get to Russia and they start talking with the Soviets are offended. They're offended that they're not talking with the British and French foreign ministers. They're top diplomats. They're just talking with these mid-level diplomats. They're offended that they took so long to get there. And critically, the British and the French are not promising them anything. They're just saying, we need to work together in case Hitler gets out of control. But they're not offering. From Stalin's point of view, this is your headache. What do I get out of it? And the British and the French really aren't offering anything. So even as Stalin's diplomats are talking with the British and the French, Hitler sees an opportunity. Now, Hitler had long been entertaining the idea of some kind of an accommodation with the Soviet Union. And this is very radical because, of course, as we know, Hitler is a rabid anti-communist. Hitler absolutely hates communism. And the communists don't care much for fascists either. In fact, fascism, Marx hadn't foreseen fascism. He hadn't foreseen a mass movement of people that wasn't a communist movement. There wasn't a movement of the political left. So the Soviets explained fascism as, well, fascism must be the last stage of capitalism before it disintegrates in these Western societies. Fascism is the government desperately trying to hold on to its capitalist system before everything falls apart. Complete misreading of what is going on. This is something new and unique. But that's the way the communists described it. And communists have a tendency to describe everyone who is even slightly to the right of them as a fascist. Okay? Everyone who's just even slightly to the right of a communist. You could be a socialist, and in a communist eyes, you were a fascist, right? There's no compromise with a totalitarian system. So Hitler, when Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia, the Soviets actually had a contract with a military supplier in Czechoslovakia called Skoda. Skoda makes cars. Okay? So after Hitler takes over Czechoslovakia, of course, the Soviet diplomats approach the Germans and they say, okay, are you going to give us all the military equipment we paid for? Fully expecting Hitler to say, no, all those contracts are null and void. Hitler says, yes, we'll honor them. We'll honor them. And the reason is because even here, in early 1939, he's thinking, we've got to have some kind of an accommodation with the Soviets. We've got to have some kind of an accommodation with the Soviets. So, by this point, summer 1939, even as these British and French diplomats are meeting the Soviets to make some kind of a deal, Hitler sends Joachim von Ribbentrop, and the world is stunned. The world is stunned when on 23 August 1939, they announce the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, or as it is sometimes called, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. It's negotiated by Ribbentrop, the German foreign minister, and Vyacheslav Molotov. Molotov is Stalin's foreign minister, the Soviet foreign commissar. This is him here. This is Molotov. You can see Stalin there. There's von Ribbentrop. I think that's Boris Shapishnikov there. Anyway, they are. They sign this agreement. And this agreement, first of all, it's a non-aggression pact, meaning we're not going to go to war with each other. We're not going to fight each other. But it was more than that. It was a trade agreement. It said we're going to trade with each other. And what they are trading is the Germans immediately, particularly if they're on the verge of really fighting a war. And Hitler's not convinced there's going to be a war here, incidentally, with the West. The Soviets would provide the Germans with vast amounts of food and raw materials. Food and raw materials. Stuff that Germany is going to need in a coming war. What the Soviets are getting out of it are things that are less immediately useful. That is to say, he's still in the process of industrializing his country, right? We can say we're probably a fully industrialized economy by about 1940-41, but there's still a lot of work to do, right? So Stalin wants new power plants. He wants dams. He also wants military technology like the plans for battleships. So the Germans are essentially giving the Soviets these kind of plans for long-term projects. So the Germans are going to get immediate benefits, useful benefits, actionable benefits, while the Soviets are going to get stuff that's really not going to benefit the Soviet Union for several years, in theory. Okay? More than that, the Soviets and the Germans, this is what's made public. These things are all public. But they also have what is known as the secret protocol. The secret protocol. And the secret protocol essentially says this. We'll split Poland right down the middle. And then the Germans say to the USSR, go ahead, you can do whatever you want to Finland, the Baltic countries, Bessarabia, which was a region in Romania the Soviets claimed. Have at it. We don't care. Knock yourself out. The British and the French will have an issue over this. We don't. So in contrast to the British and the French, the Germans are giving me something. I'm getting something from the Germans. I'm not getting anything from these other guys. So it's a much better deal as far as Stalin is concerned. It's a much better deal. And God love him, Stalin, the man who's paranoid, who trusts no one around him, he trusts the one person he shouldn't trust. Hitler, okay? That's not apparent here in 1939. With his eastern flank secure, Hitler now has a free hand to attack Poland. He believes, now that the Soviets are neutralized, there is simply no way the British and the French will declare war on him. He can go to war with Poland, the British and the French will make speeches, they won't be happy, but they're not going to go to war. Meanwhile, Ribbentrop, his idiot foreign minister, is saying, yeah, the British are cowed. Don't worry about it. British aren't going to do anything. Goering, Hermann Goering, Hitler's number 2, head of the Luftwaffe, he expressed doubt. He said, do we really want to do this? Do we really want to take this chance? And Hitler said to Goering, speaking of the British and the French, I saw them at Munich and they were worms. meaning they just gave in, gave him everything he wanted at Munich. They'll do it again.